Good afternoon. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at Jmore Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live today, feel free to drop your questions into the comment box, and you will see me turn my head, checking time from time to time, and me or our guest will be answering the questions. I wanted to welcome our sponsor, the Pearlstone Center. Pearlstone offers environmentally friendly, full-service hospitality. Their beautiful facilities and natural surroundings create the optimal setting for memorable events and group gatherings. Today's guest is veteran author and journalist Michael Olesker, who has spent several decades as a newspaper columnist and television news commentator, and is currently a columnist here at Jmore Living. On 4 occasions, Michael was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. His most recent book, Boogie, Life on a Merry-Go-Round, chronicles the life of Leonard Boogie Weinglass. Boogie was also chronicled in Barry Levinson's movie, The Diner. Let's welcome Michael.
Hey.
Hey, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. I know I truly appreciate that you gave up your weekly lunch with the boys. So I owe you one. I owe you lunch. So let's jump in right away because I love the book.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm passing this along.
I'm getting wonderful response to it from people who knew Boogie or know him or knew of him, who grew up in Northwest Baltimore in the 50s and 60s, who worked for Merry-Go-Round, or who know the legend. And it's the response to the book has been just heartwarming.
Well, he is legendary, and the world got to see a side of Boogie in the movie Diner, and that's Baltimore's Hilltop Diner, which brings us to food, even though you've told me food is not your thing.
It never was. We've talked about that. I mean, we've known each other since we were teenagers, but even before that, even when I was just a kid, I mean, I'd be out in the street playing ball, and I'd get a call from my parents to come in and have dinner. And it was why do I have to have dinner? None of the other kids' parents make them eat dinner. Why do I? I mean, absurd arguments, because I just wanted to be out in the street playing ball. Whoops, now I've lost my earpiece, but go ahead. But to me, fine dining meant the sticky buns at Garrison Junior High School's cafeteria, or French fries and gravy at the diner, at the Hilltop Diner. I don't know from food at all, except as a way of sustaining myself.
That should only happen to me.
Well, you're making a living at it.
Well, let's put it this way.
You brought up the guys that I have lunch with. I'm lucky, and this probably applies to you too. We both grew up in Baltimore. We're lifers, basically. And because I've been here my whole life, I got 3 separate groups of guys that I have lunch with every week. And because over the course of a lifetime, you develop friendships, and these are people I've known for 50, 60 years. And it's not the food. The food is an excuse to meet at a certain time and place. It's the memories. It's the laughter. It's the shared stuff of a lifetime. To me, that's always been the key to food. Just to sit and kibitz. And it's the art of the kibitz. And that to me is what it's all about. You mentioned Barry Levinson's movie Diner. And those guys, to me, the best scenes in the movie were at the diner. And, partly it was about the food, but mainly it was about the kibitz. And that's always for me what fine dining is about. Hanging out with your friends.
Well, that's to me, sitting around the table as a family unit and sharing stories of the day. To me, the passion of food comes from that feeling of family sitting around the table. And to me, when I get together with people, it's like Jackie Mason, may he rest. I think he's passed, hasn't he?
I think so. I'm not sure.
Well, Jackie Mason used to do this shtick. He says you could always tell the Jews from the non-Jews. You came out of the theater because the non-Jew says, you want to get a drink? Let's go get a drink. We'll go get a drink. And the Jews, where do you want to go to eat? Let's go eat. Let's go eat. Where do you want to go eat? So, that's the same thing with friends. It's like, let's go to lunch. Let's go to dinner. And you sit and you talk. Well, food is just as important as the conversations to me. It doesn't matter, but it's about that feeling, being around the table and sharing.
Yes.
And yes. And food's international. So, people always will sit down and have a drink or, some food, and conversation begins. I think for many years, weren't you involved at Sabatinos for lunch? Bookmakers, tell us more about that.
Well, I, in the course of my career in newspapers and television, I got to know all kinds of great street people. And for about 35 years, I had lunch every Tuesday at Sabatinos in Little Italy, and I still go down there pretty regularly, with a bunch of street characters, just wonderful street characters. And I define a character as somebody who marches to his own beat, his or her own beat, and doesn't have a very strong editing mechanism, and lives his or her life the way they want to, and not necessarily how the rules ordain we should be living our lives. Some of these guys were bookmakers, or creatively broke minor laws in creative ways, but they were great, colorful characters. And I have friends who've been in the news business for many years, and we talk about how Baltimore used to have great characters, and I think we've lost a lot of the great ones, and I'm not sure who's come up to replace them.
Well, different times. I know that when you were a commentator on WJZ for about 20 years, news commentator, that you wrote a book about how TV was changing, how all media has changed. And of course, what was it called? Baltimore? Wait a second. I'm just trying to see. Baltimore, if you live here, you're home.
The TV book was, I don't even remember the title. I've written 7 books now, I'm proud to say. I can't remember all the titles.
It was probably about TV at that time. I think that was in the title. Other books that I found fascinating: Front Stoops in the 50s, Baltimore Legends Come of Age.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning these books. The TV book, let me reference that for a moment, because I think what happened with characters was, particularly public figures, they were who they were. And then when television news came in, they suddenly started talking like tax accountants and dressing like attorneys, and they got very self-conscious about how they looked and sounded, and stopped being who they really were, because they knew they had a bigger audience. So I think that changed some things.
Right. Earlier you mentioned, I think, sticky buns. Can you wax poetic about them?
Garrison Junior High School, I was there 57 to 60, I guess. And you would go down to the cafeteria, 4th, 5th, or 6th period, And if the sticky buns were warm, especially, I don't know what they were made of, but to this day, you have people who will say, oh, the sticky buns, I think they were 6 cents a piece, and then they raised them a penny to 7. I think we had near rioting over the increase in price. But they melted in your mouth. And I have never found the likes of this anywhere else ever since leaving Garrison Junior High. I should have stayed at Garrison.
Well, what can I say? I should have stayed at Garrison too, but then I went to 3 other junior highs before I hit high
Out
school.
of the others?
Yes, yes. For teasing my hair too high and wearing my skirts too short. The devil was in me. What can I say?
Nice.
So, we talk about sticky buns, other foods that are local to Baltimore and have a history are cotties. You were talking about the price of the sticky bun. I remember going to Doc's, which was a corner drugstore. Everybody sort of had one when they lived in the city.
And every drugstore was Doc's back then.
Pardon me?
Every drugstore was Doc's.
Right, it was. Right. Getting a cottie and a Coke for 11 cents.
Yeah, that's right. And then when the hamburger places started coming in, I think the first one in Baltimore was Burger Chef, Ricetown Road around Hayward Avenue,
right near the Pimlico.
Next to the old Northwest Police Station, and a couple of blocks below the Hilltop Diner and Mandel Ballows. Hamburgers were 15 cents. I believe French fries were 12 cents, and sodas were a dime. My mother would give me $1 and say, "Here, take your brother up to Burger Chef and get dinner for less than $1. You had two meals."
You lived didn't you live down there at Druid Park Circle, around there?
No. I lived off of Rogers Avenue, Rogers and Groveland. If you went down Groveland to Crawford Avenue, it was behind the cemetery on Rogers Avenue, or
okay.
Arlington Cemetery.
I know exactly where you're talking about. Yeah. Out-of-towners don't, but you're getting a history in Baltimore food. But I remember I went to School 18, which was Drudel Avenue, and we were across from Carlin's. And at Druid Park Circle, there was like a white tower.
Yeah,
that was before Burger Chef, I think. Oh, there's so much to talk to you about.
Were you a regular at Mandel Ballows?
Well, here's the story with Mandel's. This was the concept. Mandel and Ballows, the one on across from Hilltop Diner,
right,
where the Crest Theater was.
Right.
Then there was a Mandel's on Liberty Road. The concept, right, Mandel's. So if you didn't want to be seen with your date, you went to Mandel's on Liberty Road. But if you wanted to be seen, you went to Mandel and Ballows on Reisterstown Road. Did you ever hear that story?
No, the story I heard from some of the original diner guys would be that they'd be with their dates like after a movie, and they would drive by the diner to see who was there. And then depending on who was there, based on the cars parked out front, they had a choice whether to go into the diner or take their date home. And it depended on who was at the diner. And that's how they made up their minds, because they were going to go in without dates. It was an all-male sort of bonding sort of thing.
Well, I remember I used to, going back to the diner days, that we used to go to Pikesville Bowling Alley was a hangout. You actually had to pay a cover to get in there. We'd go there, then we'd go to Suburban House, where the kids were out in the parking lot and the cars would ride through. And we go there, then a group of us would go down to the diner. And Boogie would be there on occasion. And I think the time frame of Barry's movie Diner was sort of set back a little bit. But I was the next generation down at the diner. But I remember going there, And I remember I was just trying to think of there was a Landsman, there was a Freiner. I think it was Barry Freiner, Landsman. I'm trying to think. I don't know. They were sort of like the crew that you saw from the movie Diner, but they weren't the originals. But I remember that the guy with the little car, I remember somebody eating half the side of the menu. So I remember those stories. So when I saw the movie, it really hit home.
One of the great characters at the diner was, you may be alluding to, Earl Maggid, Fat Earl Maggid, who ate half the menu one day. He was a professional eater. He was about 385 pounds, and he would, get into eating contests. But at the diner, French fries and gravy was, famous, and it got me into trouble. I was with half a dozen friends at the old Hilltop bowling alley, right across the street and around the corner at the Hilltop Shopping Center. And this was December of 1958, a couple of weeks before the famous game between the Colts and the Giants for the National Football League Championship, the legendary sudden death game. And we bowled a game, and one of the guys, not me, got the idea of sneaking out without paying, because then we could go over to the Hilltop Diner and get French fries and gravy. So we sneaked out without paying, and one of the guys got caught, Jakey Rubenstein, and he ratted on all the rest of us. And my father had just gotten 2 tickets to the championship game for him and for me. And when Jakey ratted on all of us, my father sat me down and he said, I hope you enjoyed the French fries and gravy at the diner, because you're not going to the game.
Oh.
I want this to be a lesson to you. And I said, it is. And he said, what's the lesson? And I said, never go bowling with Jakey Rubenstein. So apparently that wasn't the lesson. And I didn't get to go to the championship game because of French fries and gravy.
Gravy. Well, that's a traumatic experience. Is that why you told me you like mashed potatoes and gravy? You can't do French fries and gravy anymore?
I think Dr. Bunjon, I think you've just hit on something. Yes.
I want to go back to the Front Stoops book. And that was, and people should pick it up, Front Stoops in the 50s, Baltimore Legends Come of Age. There are many characters in there from Baltimore, but I think one of the interesting ones was Big Nancy. And with the elections just being over, Big Nancy, tell everybody who Big Nancy is.
Well, Big Nancy was Little Nancy's mother. Little Nancy is Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House. Big Nancy was Nancy D'Alessandro, her mother, and the wife of Tommy the Elder D'Alessandro, the multiple times mayor of Baltimore, and of course the mother of Tommy the Younger, who was also mayor of Baltimore. They were, of course, political power in Baltimore for many years. And Big Nancy was really ahead of her time in that her husband was the mayor, but she was the power behind the throne. And she was a political expert in her own right. She ran a lot of the campaigns, which ironically were built around food. I mean, they would have these rallies where food was the thing that brought people, you buy a ticket and get a spaghetti dinner and hear the mayor give a speech as well. But she was a remarkable woman, and Tommy the Elder was a remarkable guy who was a guy who understood street politics and understood ethnic politics, that Baltimore was an ethnic mosaic and that politics brings us together. And he knew how to play that game and taught it to his daughter.
Well, I want to interrupt because I'm getting carried away with a conversation. Our sponsor, Pearlstone Center, has a short film for you. and we will return in 15 seconds to our interview with Michael Olesker.
Pearlstone Conference and Retreat Center offers environmentally friendly, full-service, farm-to-table hospitality. Our beautiful facilities and natural surroundings make the optimal setting for memorable events and group gatherings. PearlstoneCenter.org.
We're back.
Hey,
Have you missed me?
desperately.
Desperately. We talked a little bit. I think you went down to the reopening of Lexington Market.
Yes, I did. It's nothing like the old market. This market looks more like imitation Harbor Place. It's much more modern. It's on a couple of floors. The old market, which I loved because, for one reason, is that I worked as an office boy in the summer of 1962 at a place called Better Business Forms on North Packet Street, right across the street from the Lexington Market. And I would go in there every day and get a salami sandwich at Mary Mervis Sandwiches. And it was just such a bustling, hustling place with food and drink, and there was a secondhand bookstore with magazines and just so lively. And I would meet my girlfriend at the time there, and we would have lunch. And so I'm sentimental about things like that. But the new market will have its charms. I'm sure it's still in the process of getting everybody opened, but it's still suffering from old concerns, not just about the market, not so much about the market, but the area around it. And we're all concerned about, is it safe? I had no feelings of not feeling safe there. I think that in general, the west side of downtown, there are real signs of coming back. With just the theater alone has attracted people. But the market will have its charms. Don't go expecting to see the old Lexington Market. It's not there.
Yeah. I actually had a question come in I hadn't asked you, but you might have answered it. It says, Michael, I understand food is not a driving force in your life. That being said, do you have a passion or preference for kosher style deli foods?
I mean, I love going to the local delis, but I must say, I rate delis. I can't tell the difference between one deli's corned beef or salami and the other, but I do have a preference if you have good pickles. I like a good sour pickle, and I'm not going to name names, but I am disappointed in some local delis that call themselves a deli and don't have a good sour pickle. So I am disappointed there.
A full sour or a half done?
No. The half done might as well eat the, cucumber. No,
Oh, okay.
I want the full sour pickle.
Full sour pickle. Okay. I'm just checking over notes. We can go over things. So I want to get back to today was lunch with one group of the boys. What's another group? Is there a group from city that you get together with, or media that you get together with?
Well, I have lunch on Mondays very often with a couple of old media pals, Richard Scher and Ron Matz and Tom Davis, the sportscaster. And we bring in different people every week. But again, it's the kibbutz. And we talk about, stories that we covered over the years, characters that we've known over the years. And that's the key. And then there's a Thursday group that I eat with, and then there's a Friday group that I eat with. Those are city college guys. And what's great is that we talk about, not exclusively, but some of the time, we'll talk about stuff that we went through at City, that we went through in adolescence, the stuff that we might have gotten hung up about as typical teenagers. And we realized we were all going through the same anxieties. And today we can laugh at the anxieties that we shared back then.
They were simpler then, weren't they?
Not that you ever had anxieties, because we knew each other from the neighborhood around Courtly Drive, out Liberty Road, just below Old Court. We knew each other for a year when I had moved out there my senior year at City, and you were there already. And you were a real all-American kid, adorable as could be, still are. And what anxieties could you possibly have had? You're speechless. You're speechless.
Right. It was the mean girls at school. It was trying to keep up. I know that when I started in Milford, I wanted to wear like the Bobby Brooks and these different outfits. And I was so tiny that I had to wear preteen. So those were my anxieties. Now it's the reverse. Before I forget, we have Thanksgiving coming up. And Barry Levinson did the movie Avalon. He did 3 movies that reflected life in Baltimore in different ways. And there was a famous scene in Avalon. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
The sign?
No.
Oh, you cut the turkey.
You cut the turkey.
Oh, yeah. Lou Jacoby. You cut the turkey already?
You cut the turkey.
Wonderful, wonderful scene. Lou Jacoby is also in the best scene in My Favorite Year, where the kid from the Sid Caesar writing pool brings home the guy who is modeled after the movie star. I can't think of his name. And it's a typical Jewish family in Brooklyn. And one of the women, they're so impressed that a movie star is there. And one of the women shows up in her wedding gown, nice gown. Oh, I only wore it once. Lou Jacoby was wonderful. But when he comes in Avalon, and the family has been waiting for him because he's still living in the city. They have moved to the suburbs. So he's late, and they have started eating. And that scene is wonderful because it's about family, of course, but it's also about, it captures, without belaboring the subject, the exodus out of the city to the suburbs. You know, when my family moved out Liberty Road, what do you mean? We're moving out even past Woodmore Shopping Center? I mean, the first time I went to Woodmore Shopping Center, I thought we were going to fall off the edge of the earth. I had never been out that far. I was a kid who grew up for 4 years in the Latrobe housing projects next to the Maryland Penitentiary, and then to move out to Crawford Avenue, which was still in the city. But we were moving out, and then in the 60s, people were moving even further out. And that scene captures the exodus that went on back then, where some of us were still in the city and some of us had moved out, and it began to move families away from each other. My family grew up in the Bronx within a couple of blocks of each other. They knew each other really intimately. I have cousins here, but we never lived within a block or two of each other. I miss that. I wish that we did. But that scene in Avalon it captures not just food and family, but the exodus that began to move us apart.
Right. I remember, I don't know, you were talking, you don't have much family here, but at that era, there were what we call family circles,
mm-hmm.
where the cousins and the aunts and the uncles, and you got together every 4 weeks or 6 weeks, and you went to somebody's house, and then you have a big event. When I saw that, I just thought I had a aunt who married into the family, and I just remember at the family circle that she picked up her skirt to adjust her slip in front of everyone. They just went,
That's family intimacy. Yeah.
yeah,
It's only family.
right. Nowadays that would be nothing. I look at what people wear to the airport, and I get somebody picking up and showing their slip versus I was once at the airport and somebody was wearing pajamas and slippers.
I went to a funeral in Highlandtown at a big church, one of these old, big, ornate churches. And there were people, this was summertime. There were almost everybody. They were in shorts. They were wearing sandals, flip-flops, T-shirts with advertising on the back of the T-shirt. It was a memorial service. I couldn't believe it. How'd we get to that from food? I don't know, but go ahead.
Well, that's okay. Well, it's a conversation, and we invited people to join in and listen. People will enjoy this a great deal. And I have a couple questions. I'm not going to ask you my typical food questions, but there are a couple that I ask at the end of the show that I can ask you. If you can give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't worry so much. Things have a way of working themselves out. I was a worrier.
Yeah. If you woke up tomorrow with a new talent, what would the new talent be?
If I could, what would my dream talent be?
Your dream talent. You wake up tomorrow and you have it. What would it be?
Enough to have a career as a baseball player. I was a good playground athlete. Loved playing, but wasn't varsity material. If I could do it again, wouldn't that be lovely to play for the Orioles?
That would be great. You'd be the Baltimore boy. And the final question is, what didn't I ask you that I probably should have?
No, I think you covered a lot of bases here, to stick to the baseball metaphor.
I thought so. Michael, I want to thank you after a year of nudging you to be on to finally convince you to give up lunch with the boys. I owe you lunch. And I thank you so much. It's been a great interview. No doubt. I expected that. And wish you all the best, a good Thanksgiving, and a big moi from me.
We're old pals, and I love you, and thank you for having me on the show.
Great. Okay, everyone. Next week's guest is going to be Emmanuel LaRoche, author of the just released book, Conversations Behind the Kitchen Door. Also, to let you know, I just got a notice that Baltimore's Christmas Village down at the harbor will be opening again on Thanksgiving, the 24th, at the Inner Harbor. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at food@jmoreliving.com for my email, or Instagram at Dara Cooks. All shows are immediately archived in video form on Jmore's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. Feel free to dig into our video archives of past shows. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. As always, may your plates always remain full. I will see you next Thursday. Thank you for joining us.